burning smell of betrayal still clung to the air, acrid and suffocating. The echoes of their laughter bounced off the bare walls, each peal a fresh wound. They toasted to their good fortune, oblivious to the storm gathering in my eyes. They celebrated as if they hadn't just ripped my world apart, leaving me standing in the ashes of what was supposed to be my life, a life we were supposed to share, a life they stole without a second thought. If you have a sister or a brother or anyone you call family and would protect them to the end, subscribe now. We were never a wealthy family, but we were rich in love, or so I thought. Mom worked tirelessly at the diner, her feet aching every night, while Dad drove a delivery truck, his hands calloused and worn. Every spare penny was pinched and saved, a testament to their unwavering dedication to providing for my sister, Emily, and me. Vacations were rare, luxuries even rarer. So when Mom and Dad announced with shimmering eyes that they had managed to save enough for a cruise, a real, honest-to-goodness vacation, Emily and I erupted in shrieks of joy. We spent weeks poring over brochures, circling exotic destinations and dreaming of sun-drenched beaches and turquoise waters. I could almost feel the warm breeze on my face, taste the salt on my lips. The air crackled with anticipation, a shared excitement that bound us even closer as a family. My name is Heather, and the moment the cruise was announced, it felt like all my hard work had finally started to pay off, because I had been struggling to keep my grades high while juggling a part-time job to help with household expenses. Then came the bomb, a casual, almost offhand remark from Mom, delivered with a strained smile. "Sweetheart," she began, her voice tight, we can only afford one ticket." The air in the room seemed to thicken, the vibrant posters suddenly dull and lifeless. My heart pounded against my ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage. One ticket? What did she mean, one ticket? Surely there was some mistake. Maybe she meant one ticket now, with the promise of another to follow. That the look on her face told a different story, a story of sacrifice and hard choices, a story that left me reeling. "It's just, Emily has been working so hard." Dad chimed in, his gaze fixed on the floor. "And she really deserves this." Deserves it? What about me? Hadn't I been working hard too? Hadn't I been pulling my weight, sacrificing my own desires for the good of the family? The unspoken words hung heavy in the air, a suffocating blanket of disappointment and resentment. The days that followed were a blur of forced smiles and hollow conversations. Emily, bless her heart, seemed genuinely oblivious to the turmoil churning inside me. She chattered endlessly about packing lists and shore excursions, her excitement a painful counterpoint to my growing despair. I tried to be happy for her, truly I did, but the bitterness was a persistent undercurrent, a poison seeping into my soul. I helped her pack, folding her sundresses and swimsuits with meticulous care, each item a reminder of what I was missing. I plastered a smile on my face as she tried on new sunglasses, the reflection mocking me in its carefree joy. Inside, I was crumbling. I was being erased. I was becoming invisible. The trip was drawing near, and it seemed that my family had forgotten I even existed, blinded by Emily's upcoming adventure. The day they left was a masterpiece of carefully orchestrated indifference. Mom hugged me tightly, her eyes brimming with unshed tears. "We'll bring you back something nice," she whispered, her voice thick with guilt. Dad clapped me on the shoulder, his touch fleeting and impersonal. Emily, caught up in the whirlwind of departure, barely spared me a glance. As I watched them drive away, the crimson sun dipping below the horizon, a cold resolve began to harden within me. They thought they could dismiss me. They thought they could prioritize one child over another. They thought they could break my spirit and get away with it. They were wrong, so very wrong. The person I trusted most was one of them. The silence in the house was deafening, a stark contrast to the usual cacophony of family life. Every tick of the clock echoed through the empty rooms, each chime a hammer blow against my fragile composure. Sleep became a luxury I could no longer afford. Night after night I tossed and turned, replaying the scene at the driveway, the sting of their departure a fresh wound. My grades, once a source of pride, began to slip. The teachers noticed, their concerned glances adding another layer of guilt to my already burdened conscience. I tried to focus, to recapture the motivation that had driven me before, but the weight of injustice was a leaden anchor, dragging me down into a sea of despair. Even my part-time job, which I once found fulfilling, now felt like a monotonous chore. The customers' cheerful banter grated on my nerves, their carefree laughter a painful reminder of what I had lost. I started making mistakes, dropping trays, miscalculating bills, each error earning me a reprimand from my manager and a further dent to my already fragile self-esteem. The money I earned felt tainted, a constant reminder of the sacrifices I was making, sacrifices that seemed to go unnoticed, unappreciated. I tried talking to Mom on the phone, attempting to broach the subject of my feelings, but her responses were vague, evasive.
She would change the subject, asking about my day, about the weather, anything to avoid confronting the elephant in the room. Emily, when she got on the line, would regale me with tales of exotic locales and thrilling adventures, oblivious to the pain her words inflicted. It was as if they were living in a different world, a world of sunshine and carefree joy, while I was trapped in a perpetual twilight, a world of resentment and despair. Desperate for solace, I turned to my friends, hoping to find a sympathetic ear, a shoulder to cry on. But even they seemed unable to understand the depth of my pain. They offered platitudes, suggesting I focus on the positive, that I appreciate the fact that my sister was having such a wonderful experience. Their well-meaning advice felt hollow, inadequate. They hadn't been erased, hadn't been deemed less deserving, hadn't been left behind to pick up the pieces of a shattered dream. I tried to explain the feeling of being overlooked, of being devalued, but my words seemed to fall flat, lost in the echo chamber of their own privileged experiences. I felt isolated, alone, adrift in a sea of indifference. My attempts to reconnect with my family, to bridge the growing chasm between us, only seemed to widen the gap. Their obliviousness to my suffering felt like a betrayal, a confirmation that I was, indeed, less important, less deserving. The burning smell of betrayal intensified, permeating every aspect of my life, poisoning my thoughts, and fueling a simmering rage that threatened to consume me. I started keeping a journal, pouring out my thoughts and feelings onto the page, a desperate attempt to make sense of the chaos within me. But even that offered little relief. The words seemed inadequate, unable to capture the true extent of my pain. The injustice of it all gnawed at me, a relentless tormentor that refused to be silenced. One evening, while rummaging through some old photo albums, I stumbled upon a picture of our family, taken years ago, during a simpler, happier time. We were all smiling, carefree, our arms wrapped around each other in a tight embrace. As I gazed at the image, a wave of nostalgia washed over me, a bittersweet reminder of what we had lost. The love, the laughter, the sense of belonging, it all seemed like a distant memory, a phantom limb that ached with a dull, persistent pain. A tear trickled down my cheek, blurring the image before me. In that moment, I realized that I couldn't continue down this path, that I couldn't allow resentment and bitterness to consume me. I needed to find a way to reclaim my life, to heal the wounds that had been inflicted, to prove to myself and to them that I was worthy, that I was deserving, that I was not invisible. The seed of revenge had been planted, nurtured by pain and watered by injustice, and it was beginning to sprout. The walls seemed to close in, the air growing thick and heavy, each breath a struggle. I was trapped in a suffocating bubble of despair, with no escape in sight. The weight of their betrayal pressed down on me, crushing my spirit, extinguishing the last flicker of hope. I stopped eating, the mere thought of food turning my stomach. The reflection in the mirror became a stranger, a gaunt, hollow-eyed figure staring back at me with vacant indifference. My clothes hung loosely on my frame, a testament to my dwindling appetite and my growing disconnection from the world. I stopped showering,
stopped brushing my hair, stopped caring about my appearance. I retreated into myself, building walls around my heart, shutting out any remaining vestiges of human connection. My room became my sanctuary, a dark, silent refuge from the relentless assault of my own thoughts. I covered the windows with blankets, plunging the space into perpetual twilight, a reflection of the darkness that had consumed my soul. The only sound was the rhythmic ticking of the clock, a constant reminder of the passage of time, time that seemed to stretch on endlessly, without purpose or meaning. I spent hours lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, lost in a labyrinth of self-pity and resentment. The faces of my family haunted my dreams, their smiles twisted into grotesque caricatures of joy, their voices mocking my pain. I would wake up in a cold sweat, my heart pounding against my ribs, gasping for breath, struggling to escape the suffocating grip of my own despair. One particularly bleak afternoon, while aimlessly flipping through TV channels, I stumbled upon a news report about a local family who had lost everything in a house fire. The images of the charred remains of their home, the tear-streaked faces of the parents, the bewildered expressions of the children, it all struck a chord within me. I saw myself in their story, a victim of circumstance, stripped bare, left with nothing but ashes. But as I watched them rally together, supporting each other, rebuilding their lives from the ground up, a spark of defiance ignited within me. I realized that I had a choice. I could succumb to despair, allowing it to consume me entirely, or I could fight back, reclaim my life, and prove to myself and to them that I was stronger than they thought. The decision was not easy. The darkness still clung to me, whispering insidious doubts in my ear. But the spark of defiance had taken root, and it was beginning to grow, fueled by a burning desire for justice. That night, I had a dream. I was standing on a cliff overlooking a vast, turbulent ocean. The waves crashed against the rocks below, their roar deafening. The sky was dark and stormy, the wind whipping my hair around my face. In the distance, I saw a small boat, tossed and turned by the raging sea. As I watched, the boat capsized, its passengers thrown into the icy water. They struggled to stay afloat, their cries for help lost in the wind and the waves. Suddenly, I felt a surge of strength, a surge of power coursing through my veins. I dove into the ocean, battling the waves, swimming toward the struggling figures. One by one, I pulled them from the water, dragging them to safety on the shore. As I looked at their faces, I realized that they were my family. They were battered and bruised, their eyes filled with fear and gratitude. I knew, with unwavering certainty, that I could save them, that I could rescue them from the storm. I woke up with a gasp, my heart pounding, my body trembling. The dream had shaken me to my core. It was a sign, a message from my subconscious, telling me that I had the strength to overcome my challenges, to heal my wounds, and to reclaim my life. I got out of bed, walked over to the window, and pulled back the blankets. Sunlight streamed into the room, chasing away the shadows, illuminating the dust motes dancing in the air. I took a deep breath, filling my lungs with the fresh morning air. I felt a sense of clarity, a sense of purpose that I hadn't felt in weeks. The darkness was still there, lurking in the corners of my mind, but it no longer held me captive. I had found a reason to fight, a reason to live. The first step was to take care of myself. I started eating again, forcing down small meals, nourishing my body and my mind. I started showering, brushing my hair, putting on clean clothes. I started going outside, taking walks in the park, breathing in the fresh air, soaking up the sunshine. I started reconnecting with my friends, reaching out to them, sharing my feelings, seeking their support. Slowly, gradually, I began to emerge from the darkness, like a flower pushing through the cracks in the pavement, reaching for the light. I knew that the road ahead would not be easy. There would be setbacks. There would be moments of doubt. There would be times when I would want to give up. But I also knew that I was stronger than I thought, that I was capable of overcoming any obstacle,
that I was deserving of happiness and love. The seed of revenge, which had been planted in the soil of betrayal, began to send out tendrils, seeking nourishment, seeking a way to blossom. I started to observe my family more closely, paying attention to their habits, their weaknesses, their secrets. I listened to their conversations, noting their inconsistencies, their lies, their hidden agendas. I became a student of their lives, dissecting their every move, searching for a way to exploit their vulnerabilities.
I started keeping a detailed record of my observations, documenting everything in a secret notebook, hidden away from prying eyes. I knew that revenge was a dish best served cold, and I was prepared to be patient, to wait for the opportune moment to strike. I smiled. I acted broken, but I was recording everything. Their biggest weakness? They thought they were untouchable. I smiled, played their game, and acted the part of the dutiful daughter, all the while meticulously gathering information. My secret notebook became my most prized possession, filled with dates, times, names, and meticulously documented observations. I learned their routines, their habits, their secret rendezvous. Dad's late-night business meetings that always seemed to coincide with Mom's book club. Emily's online shopping addiction, fueled by Dad's credit card and hidden from Mom's watchful eyes. Mom's quiet afternoons spent at the local park, always near a certain bench, where a man with a familiar face would appear. A shared glance, a hushed conversation, a quick handoff of a small, folded piece of paper. I dug deeper, using my tech skills to uncover their digital footprints. Deleted emails, hidden files, encrypted messages. Nothing was safe from my prying eyes. I installed a keystroke logger on the family computer, capturing every password, every search query, every online transaction. I learned how to bypass their security measures, how to erase my tracks, how to remain invisible in the digital world. The more I uncovered, the more disgusted I became. Their carefully constructed facade of a perfect family was crumbling before my very eyes, revealing a web of deceit, lies, and betrayals. There were close calls, moments when I thought I would be discovered. One afternoon, while I was searching through Dad's office, he unexpectedly returned home early. I barely had time to hide the flash drive, containing all of his illicit financial records before he walked in. I pretended to be looking for a book, my heart pounding in my chest, my hands trembling. He eyed me suspiciously, his gaze lingering a moment too long, before finally turning away. Another time, Emily caught me snooping through her phone. She grabbed it from my hand, her eyes blazing with anger. "What do you think you're doing?" she demanded, her voice shrill. I stammered, making up some lame excuse about needing to borrow her charger. She didn't believe me, but she let it go, warning me never to touch her phone again. These close calls only fueled my determination. I knew I was getting closer to the truth, closer to uncovering the evidence I needed to expose their lies and exact my revenge. The anticipation was almost unbearable, a constant hum of excitement and dread. I imagined the look on their faces when they realized that their secrets were about to be revealed, when their perfect world came crashing down around them. I envisioned their shame, their humiliation, their desperation. The thought of it brought a twisted sense of satisfaction, a validation of my pain, and a justification for my actions. I began to explore legal loopholes, local ordinances, and the intricacies of privacy laws. Hours were spent scouring online databases, legal journals, and obscure government websites. My goal wasn't just to expose them, it was to do so in a way that would have lasting consequences, consequences that would cripple them financially and socially. I discovered that Dad's business meetings were actually clandestine poker games held in a back room of a local bar. The stakes were high, the players were ruthless, and the games were illegal. I learned that Emily's online shopping addiction had spiraled out of control, leaving her buried under a mountain of debt, a debt that Dad was secretly paying off, using company funds. And Mom's afternoon rendezvous? It turned out that the man on the bench was a private investigator, hired by Dad years ago to spy on Mom, suspecting her of having an affair. The irony was not lost on me. They were all guilty, all complicit in their own downfall. I needed irrefutable proof, evidence that would stand up in court and withstand public scrutiny. I installed hidden cameras in the house, disguised as smoke detectors and picture frames, capturing their every move, their every word. I tapped their phone lines, recording their conversations, their secret deals, their whispered betrayals.
I consulted with a forensic accountant, providing him with the financial records I had stolen from Dad's office. He helped me trace the flow of money, uncovering a complex web of offshore accounts, shell corporations, and fraudulent transactions. I even contacted a lawyer, a sharp, ruthless woman who specialized in family law and corporate fraud. I presented her with the evidence I had gathered, explaining my plan, my desire for justice. She listened intently, her eyes gleaming with interest. "This is a very delicate situation," she said, her voice low and measured. "But if you play your cards right, you could end up with everything." I knew I was walking a dangerous path, that I was risking everything, but I was willing to take the chance. The burning smell of betrayal had become all-consuming, and I would stop at nothing to exact my revenge. The exact day they tried to end me, I exposed the truth.
She outlined the legal avenues: fraud charges against my father, potential tax evasion, Emily's reckless spending habits exposed for all to see, and Mom's little rendezvous used as leverage in a messy divorce that would leave her reputation in tatters. The image of their perfect lives crumbling fueled a dark satisfaction within me. But Miss Harding cautioned patience. "We need to control the narrative," she said, tapping a manicured nail against a photo of my smiling family, the very picture of suburban bliss. "We need to orchestrate this perfectly. One wrong move, and it all falls apart." Her strategy was simple: lure them into a false sense of security, let them continue their charade, and then, at the precise moment, detonate the bomb. The opportunity came sooner than I expected. Dad announced a family dinner at his prestigious country club, a celebration of his business success, an event dripping with false pretenses. It was the perfect stage, a gathering of their friends, colleagues, and acquaintances, the very people whose opinions they craved. The invitations were sent, the RSVPs collected, the menu meticulously planned. They were setting the stage for their grand performance, unaware that I was about to rewrite the script. That night, as I pretended to admire Mom's designer dress and listened to Emily's vapid stories about her latest shopping spree, I felt a strange detachment, as if I were watching a play, observing characters I no longer recognized. I knew what was coming, and the knowledge gave me a chilling sense of power. The plan was simple. During Dad's self-congratulatory toast, I would hijack the club's audio-visual system and broadcast the evidence I had collected: the hidden camera footage, the tapped phone calls, the financial records, everything laid bare for everyone to see. Miss Harding had prepared a comprehensive legal document outlining the charges against my parents and Emily, ready to be served the moment the truth was revealed. The lawyer had also contacted several media outlets, ensuring that the story would hit the headlines the following day. The day of the dinner arrived, heavy with anticipation. I spent the afternoon meticulously preparing, double-checking every detail. I loaded the evidence onto a secure USB drive, practiced my speech in front of the mirror, and coordinated with Miss Harding, who was waiting nearby with a team of process servers and reporters. As I dressed for the evening, I felt a strange mix of excitement and dread. This was it, the culmination of months of planning, the moment of truth. There was no turning back. As I walked into the country club, I could feel the weight of their gazes, their judgment, their expectations. They saw me as the broken, pathetic daughter, the one who had never lived up to their standards. But tonight, they would see a different side of me, a side they never expected. They would see the architect of their downfall. During the cocktail hour, I discreetly made my way to the club's AV room, using a stolen employee ID to gain access. The equipment was surprisingly outdated, but I quickly figured out how to connect my USB drive to the system. I tested the connection, ensuring that the video and audio would play flawlessly. Everything was in place. As dinner was served, the tension in the room was palpable. Dad stood up to make his toast, his face flushed with pride, his voice booming with self-importance. He spoke of his success, his achievements, his perfect family. As he raised his glass, I gave Miss Harding the signal. The lawyer moved into position with the process servers. This was it. Just as Dad was about to take a sip of champagne, I pressed play. The screen flickered, and the room went silent. The first image was a grainy video of Dad entering a shady motel with a woman who was definitely not my mother. Then the audio began. Dad's voice, slurred with alcohol, negotiating the terms of an offshore account with a shady business partner. The murmurs started, growing into a chorus of gasps and whispers. Dad's face turned crimson, his eyes wide with panic. He tried to speak, but the words caught in his throat. Emily's face crumpled, her carefully applied makeup streaked with tears. Mom stared blankly ahead, her eyes vacant, as if she were watching a horror movie unfold before her very eyes. The video continued, exposing their secrets, their lies, their betrayals. The room erupted into chaos. People were shouting, pointing, whispering. Dad lunged towards me, his face contorted with rage, but Miss Harding's process servers were too quick. They stepped in front of him, serving him with the legal documents, officially commencing the end of his reign. The final image on the screen was a photo of our family, taken years ago, during a happier time. But this time, the faces were blurred, distorted, unrecognizable. The words appeared on the screen. The truth will always come out. But someone had changed the code. I stood frozen as something unexpected appeared on screen. It wasn't the evidence I had so carefully curated. Instead, it was me, a live feed. The camera was pointed directly at my face. And then my own words echoed throughout the room. Words spoken in private, words spoken to Miss Harding, outlining every detail of my plan, my burning desire for revenge, my twisted sense of satisfaction. My voice reverberated. I want to watch them burn. The camera zoomed in on Dad's face. He smirked. He raised his glass, a triumphant glint in his eyes. Checkmate, he mouthed.
The icy dread that gripped me was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. My meticulously crafted plan, the months of painstaking work, shattered in an instant. My own voice, amplified and distorted, filled the room, painting me as the villain, the vengeful daughter consumed by hate. My carefully constructed image of victimhood evaporated. The faces around me, once filled with shock and outrage at my family's exposed secrets, now turned towards me, reflecting a mixture of confusion, disgust, and pity. Dad's smirk was a knife twisting in my gut. I wanted to scream, to deny, to explain, but the words wouldn't come. I was trapped, exposed, my own weapon turned against me. Miss Harding, her face a mask of professional disappointment, signaled her team to stand down. The process servers retreated, the reporters dispersed, their stories suddenly flipped on its head. The lawyer vanished. I was on my own. In the stunned silence, Mom finally spoke, her voice barely a whisper. How could you? It wasn't a question of my family's actions, their transgressions, but a condemnation of my own. The air crackled with unspoken accusations. Emily, tears streaming down her face, spat, "You're insane." The truth of their words struck me with the force of a physical blow. Had I become the very monster I sought to destroy? Had my quest for revenge consumed me, blinding me to the consequences of my actions? It seemed my family had outplayed me, and the satisfaction I was craving was never going to be served. The aftermath was swift and brutal. The story exploded online, fueled by the leaked video and the sensational twist. I became a pariah. The vengeful daughter splashed across every news outlet, my face plastered on every social media platform. My friends distanced themselves, acquaintances avoided me, and strangers hurled insults and accusations. My phone buzzed incessantly with hateful messages. My inbox overflowed with threats and condemnations. I retreated into myself, shutting out the world, consumed by shame and regret. My family, meanwhile, closed ranks, presenting a united front against the outsider who had dared to attack them. They gave interviews expressing their shock and disappointment at my actions, painting themselves as victims of my twisted vendetta. Dad, with his slick charm and well-honed public image, managed to deflect the worst of the accusations, portraying his actions as mistakes and lapses in judgment. Emily, with her carefully crafted sob story, garnered sympathy for her struggles with online shopping and her naivete regarding her father's business dealings. Mom, with her quiet dignity and wounded expression, became the poster child for the betrayed wife, earning the sympathy of women everywhere. And I was the villain, the outcast, the one who had destroyed her own family. The legal repercussions were equally devastating.
Harding, citing ethical concerns, dropped me as a client, leaving me to face the consequences of my actions alone. The evidence I had gathered, once considered damning, was now tainted, inadmissible in court. My family launched a countersuit, accusing me of invasion of privacy, defamation, and emotional distress. The judge sided with them, issuing a restraining order and ordering me to pay a hefty sum in damages. I was financially ruined, socially ostracized, and emotionally broken. In the months that followed, I drifted aimlessly, haunted by the ghosts of my past. I lost my job, my apartment, my sense of self. I was a shell of my former self, consumed by regret and despair. One evening, as I sat alone in a darkened room, staring blankly at the television screen, I received a message from an unknown number. It was a single word: congratulations. A photograph was attached. It was a picture of Dad, shaking hands with Miss Harding, a triumphant grin on both their faces. The truth hit me like a thunderbolt. It had all been a setup. Dad and Miss Harding had orchestrated the entire thing, manipulating me, playing on my emotions, using my desire for revenge to their own advantage. They had known about my plan all along. Dad had allowed me to gather the evidence, knowing that he could control the narrative and turn it against me. He had used his connections and his money to manipulate the legal system, to discredit me, to destroy my life. And Miss Harding? She had been his accomplice, his pawn, a willing participant in his twisted game. My revenge plot was nothing more than a tool for him to silence me. The realization was crushing, a final, devastating blow. It was a bitter pill. But as the initial shock wore off, a new feeling began to emerge, a quiet, steely resolve. They may have won the battle, but the war was far from over. They had underestimated me. They had thought they had broken me, but they had only made me stronger. They had thought they had silenced me, but they had only given me a new voice. It was time to start over. I began to rebuild my life, piece by piece. It would take time, effort, and a lot of hard work. As I began to heal, I realized something profound. Revenge wasn't sweet. It was necessary. It was a messy, complicated emotion, but it was also a powerful motivator. It could drive you to do things you never thought possible. The feeling can create monsters if you let it. They may have won this round, but I will not be silenced. They lost everything. I just smiled. Would you have done the same? Let me know in the comments. Subscribe for more justice.